Well, welcome into the P3 show, Pro Production Podcast. My name is Nick Olson. I'm your host. This is the third time we've done this now because we've had technical issues. But it's great to have you in either way. It's my fault. We didn't check everything beforehand. Also, I forgot to unmute Brady's microphone the second time, and we didn't vet the audio playlist well enough either. So if you're watching this live, you probably think less of me, and I would as well. Joining me in now is our co-host, though. He's normally with us, and it's Brady Davis. Brady, how are you?
Hello, Nick. I am great, man. Again, it's great to be back on the P3 podcast. This is, our 8th, 10th week or so doing this. And tonight's going to be a really cool night. We're doing our mega stream, which is going to encompass our last kind of 4 weeks, which talked about live streaming, including audio. Then we went lighting, video, and then graphics. If you haven't seen any of those, you can go back. Last week's was really cool, where we made a graphic live on the stream. So go back on our video on demand on YouTube or Facebook to check those out. But super excited to be here tonight with some industry experts talking live streaming and taking your questions live. You can hit us up in the chat, or you can even give us a call, and we'll take your question live. You'll be on air, 317-586-2844. So send in your questions, call in now, and can't wait to chat with you guys.
Brady, you absolutely nailed it. Yep, that's right. We're taking your questions. That's the whole goal of tonight. Is we're going to be talking about, we've talked about the last 4 weeks, audio, video, lighting, and graphics for streaming, but also going to be taking your questions as well. Kind of going back to the roots when the show first started, before this was P3. We basically took questions via the Facebook chat, the YouTube chat, and the phone line as well. So we're going to be doing that tonight. But before that, we have two other guests I want to introduce. One person, not necessarily a guest. They were on with us week one. He did the audio podcast, the audio for broadcast video. Check that out if you haven't seen it in the YouTube and Facebook on demand pages. But joining us now, CEO and owner of Force Technology Solutions, it's AJ Fager. AJ, how are you?
Hello. I'm doing well.
You are?
Yes.
Despite everything that's happened tonight?
I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. We'll get to the next person. He's more important.
Absolutely. No, he is. The next person too, I'm really excited for this guy to join us. I've been trying to get him on the stream for a long time. And his name is the infamous Tony Stairs. Tony, how are you? Tony, your mic's... Oh my gosh. Okay. And I have it. Nope, it's here. It's here.
Wait,
Tony.
Is it working?
Yep, it's working.
Am I here? You need an audio guy to help out?
Look at us go.
I need something to help us out tonight. Tony, what's up?
Oh man, nothing much. Just hanging out in the the old home office here, and locked down, but doing good.
Nice.
Hanging out with you guys.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to put it on this camera view for the rest of the show, not touch anything, and hopefully I don't break anything else, and we can actually focus on the content. So Tony and I were joking around in either take 1 or 2 that this is why you don't do things 30 minutes before the stream starts, right?
Yeah. It's failure to plan is a plan to fail is what my grandfather would always tell me. So yeah.
And that's the quote of the night. We can stop the stream right there. That's great. No, I love that. So Tony, as our guest, you've been watching the last 3 weeks or so. I mean, you've kind of stopped in and out. No one watches for more than 15 minutes at a time, and I don't blame them. But tell me the things that you've kind of watched, the things that you've seen, anything that's caught your eye specifically.
I mean, I think you guys are doing great work. I mean, it's cool to see other people engage. To know that kind of we're all together in this. And that, it just goes to show that, we're all here to be helpful. And, learned a lot in the lighting portion just because I don't do a whole lot of lighting. So it's kind of cool to listen in on that as well. And I learned that I need one of these cool microphones. We tried to get mine working, and it just wasn't cool enough to make the podcast.
Hey, it's fine. It works. Your mic's a little choppy right now too, by the way. I don't know what that's about, but we're just going to roll through it. It's totally fine. So yeah, the lighting one was really good. That was with
2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi is what it is.
It is that 2.4. AJ can tell you more about this. Here's the exciting thing. We've had some great guests on. We really have. It was really cool to have AJ on week 1, who is experienced, obviously, with technology and production technology. But week 2, I mean, we really had some superstars on week 2, 3, and 4. We had guys that were working right now with Lady Antebellum and Keith Urban are working for NBA on TNT. Guys that have a lot of experience with graphics. So we really had a kind of a rock star cast on. But we've got a rock star cast here too tonight. And the whole goal of tonight is to be taking your questions. So again, whether it's the YouTube live page, whether it's the Facebook page, whether it's the phone number 317-586-2844, we're taking your questions. But I want to start off with this. We haven't had Tony's perspective. Tony, live streaming. Okay, you've done it all. You were the production director at a large church, so you manage the audio, video, lighting. Not really the graphic side of things, right? That was your communication department, but you've managed those 3 things in a live aspect. What are the things maybe that are standing out to you that we've talked about in the last 3 weeks or haven't talked about in the last 3 weeks? If you had to cover like audio, video, lighting, what are the most important critical things right now for organizations that are doing live streaming because they have to? Okay, now I didn't mute Tony's mic. Tony's mic is just muted, so...
We lost his mic.
We lost his mic, yeah. Maybe switch to your desktop mic. AJ, what are the most important things for live streaming for you?
I don't know. I'm gonna be partial to audio. It just kind of goes back to what we talked about week 1 was audio, and I think that's just definitely the. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just you can't have picture without sound. So I think audio is definitely the most important. I actually had the opportunity to mix at a church last night for streaming, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, that's how I feel.
So I have been able to post a lot that episode where you did the audio for video as well, AJ. And it was really well received by a lot of people. I've just seen comments where people have been asking, how should we be mixing for our broadcast? How should we be doing our leveling? Our audio content either seems quiet. That's pretty much the one I hear all the time, is it seems quiet. So it's been super helpful to just be able to just link that and just have people listen to it. And we've had really good feedback on it as well to the Facebook page. Yeah. So yeah. As we work on getting Tony's microphone back here, as Tony works on getting Tony's microphone back here, and Tony might be frozen.
I think he froze. He looks frozen.
Oh, he's back now.
There he is.
Are you with us now, Tony?
I'm with you. How's the microphone?
This is perfect. This is perfect. I love it. We're doing things on the fly. Tony, okay, we left off on the question of live streaming things that are important to you. What are some of those things?
I mean, you got to have audio, that's for sure. You need to test your equipment. I mean, here we are tonight. I'm literally on my 3rd resource to make this work. We tried the Motu interface, tried the Jabra speakerphone, and we're now back to just a standard old microphone in the laptop. So, you got to have options when it comes to making this stuff work. You can't, be shooting for one thing and hoping it worked. You got to test it out and before you move forward. So lesson learned, guys.
I actually will say that is something that has come up a lot as we've been looking at people's systems, is really just the lack of, and obviously everyone has to start somewhere. So, I think one of my big hopes is that I think for the most part, streaming is absolutely here to stay. It's not going anywhere, especially because majority of places are going to experience a rolling opening. No one's going to be opening day one and expect large crowds, things like that. And I definitely think that having those redundancies in place is key, especially as it relates. All of this was kind of forced on us as a society, really just overnight. I don't think anyone was planning on it, and those that even felt like they had enough time to put everything together just ended up, I think one of the big things that I hope that I see after all of this, I guess gets back to a little bit normal, is that people do put those redundancies in place, because I think every weekend has kind of just been a lot of phone calls, just a lot of support calls, things like that, just because plan A failed. And I think that that's very important, as Tony was saying, to really have that plan A, B, and even plan C, because at the end of the day, it's all technology. And even today, I was on a service call troubleshooting a failed power supply on a real expensive processor. And at the end of the day, anything's capable of failing. So I think that's something to keep in mind, is having those plan Bs and even plan Cs on how you're going to capture that content.
So talk about redundancies for me, guys. As we talk about redundancies, obviously we think of, if you've been around this industry for any period of time, or if you've just been around computers in general, redundancy generally has the, we talk about redundancies like redundant power supplies, things like that, something that fails over automatically. Now, in broadcast systems, that's kind of difficult to have stuff fail over automatically, right? For most users, that's not a realistic possibility. So when you say redundancies too, like talk us through redundancies. Tony or AJ, talk us through the type of redundancies that are automatic failover, but also just something as simple as having an iPhone ready to do a broadcast from.
Yeah, I think the sky's the limit.
Exactly. I mean,
Tony, go, and then we'll go to AJ.
Yeah, for me specifically, Easter Sunday, I was watching my church online, and the stream went down. I'm watching it via the Roku app, and everything's fine. All of a sudden, it wasn't. And then I started texting in because I know one of the technical directors there, and come to find out, not only did the Roku stream go out, but their actual church website stream went down. But fortunately, the Roku stream was only down very briefly. So it's even down to having like redundant streams. Maybe you're streaming to Facebook and your website and, somewhere else, just so that, you have, just in case one site gets bogged down, you've got another source to go to. People are savvy enough to swap over to something else in order to watch, things like that. But, down to redundant pieces of equipment, we have customers that don't even rely on the same piece of equipment in a critical path. So they may use two different vendors for a critical path, just in case there's a known bug, in a path, that they won't have that same bug on both systems. So,
hey, and before we move farther,
it's a rabbit hole you can go down for sure.
Before we move farther with AJ's redundancy answer, Tony, real quick too, will you tell us? And I totally spaced over this. I'm sorry. Is in the chaos that was the start of the show. What do you do? Who do you do it for? What's your background?
Yeah, so I have a background in audio video production. I was a technical director for a long time. I have a long history of AVL work in the last 20 years, but currently I work for Lavo North America, where I do systems and sales engineering for our sales team. I work on designs for large-scale broadcast projects, but also lead the House of Worship market for our sales team as well. So developing kind of what the house of market looks like for us. So yeah, that's what I do from day in and day out.
And Lavo spelled L-A-W-O because it's German. Because it's German.
And it's blue.
And it's blue.
And it's blue.
I got my Lavo shirt in there. Lavo has, if we ever have NAB or Infocom again, Lavo's the place to be, because Lavo has all of the what is the name of the beer that's served at closing time every day?
It's some sort of German beer that we serve at closing time. We literally have to get it specially brought in for the show, because it's not something they usually have in the convention center. So yeah, it should come by the booth definitely at happy hour. Love to have you guys.
Yeah, it's cool.
Now I'm kind of mad that I wasn't brought there.
Have you guys in 2021, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I had the question asked me today. I haven't even checked on it because I just assumed Infocom is officially canceled. Not that that's huge on your scope, but Infocom is officially canceled. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yep, officially canceled. Yep.
So NAB 2021.
unless NAB New York still goes through. That's I've been to that a couple.
I don't. Anything in New York right now. That's wishful thinking.
It's later on. Hey, one can dream. Okay.
Well, AJ, are we going to NAB New York if it happens?
I mean, I'm going. I don't know about you guys.
AJ, first off, tell us about redundancies. First off, tell us about how you've now not traveled in a long time and you were really looking forward to traveling and going to Las Vegas. But also then tell us about redundancies, maybe what you're doing redundant in your life to make up for that lack of travel.
Well, I think yeah, it's definitely something where when you're an introvert and the only vacation you ever plan is also a workcation called NAB Las Vegas, then yeah, it's definitely a hard season because we should all be in Las Vegas right now. Actually, last week we should have been in Las Vegas. So.
Last week.
Yeah. Anyway, either way, we should still be recovering from Las Vegas this week, but that's not the case.
Recovering.
Anyway, I think
From lack of sleep.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's true. It does start early in the morning.
It's like the one time I'm not introverted. I mean, I think Tony can even say, even when we hang out, it's like, I'm a pretty boring person, but put me in Las Vegas and I'm okay.
I don't know. I wouldn't say you're.
That's
I would
fair,
not say you're. I would never describe you as a boring person. I'm not sure many people would. So
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that.
yeah, I wouldn't say you're a boring person.
I'm a reserved person. How's that?
That's fair. I can go with reserve.
Yeah, that's
person.
fair.
Reserved.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
a
you're the
reserved.
only one who I've ever seen sit on the corner at Infocom or NAB in socks and work while everybody else is checking out cool beer and hanging out. You're sitting there for about 6 hours a day, sitting in the corner working. So
Yeah, the first
that was
time.
great.
that's why we love you.
The first
And
time
your
I ever
Ross
went
socks.
in the Ross socks,
Yeah.
the first time I ever went to NAB with Jenny and AJ, Jenny and AJ worked out in the lobby for a good portion of the time and never joined us actually in the convention hall.
And when you
So-
say work out, you don't mean like physically work out.
no,
right? You
worked
mean, like,
out.
work.
Yeah, they were on their
Working
computers.
out in the lobby.
Working,
I was
yes.
working out.
Yes. I want to ask AJ about his thoughts on redundancy and what that means to him. But before I do, again, reminder, we're taking your questions in chat, both on the Facebook page and the YouTube page, as well as our phone number, 317-586-2844. We just mentioned her, Jenny, our other owner of the company / AJ's wife. She's taking the phone calls. So call Jenny right now. She'll pass you through to us so you can get your questions answered about all types of production, not just live streaming. But AJ, tell us about redundancy.
I think whenever I always have this conversation with people, it always comes down to what I just like to talk about as what is your acceptable rate of failure, and then we'll design redundancies around that. Because if you don't know what that is, then your redundancy might be as much as buying a backup generator and the exact same system that's your primary system, and if you don't have that conversation, then I think the sky very quickly becomes the limit as far as redundancies go. I mean, I can speak to what I've done in places. I've done as many things as a backup audio console that might not even be the same manufacturer. It might be as simple as an X32 in a rack that you just have, that you can patch into pretty quickly and run an acoustic set or run something more simple, and then all the way down to, it's not uncommon in the broadcast world, especially it's in the baseband systems anyway, where you have the ability, you have normal patching on the inputs and outputs of your router. And, that way, if your router goes down, you can patch around your router, you can patch directly in your switcher, you can use your, with some of the newer frame syncs and everything like that are able to be added to routers, you can pretty much use a router as a switcher now as well. So there's a lot of things that you can do to mitigate all of that. I think Tony can talk a little bit more about some of the redundancies in the
I was going to say
IP
this is like a counseling session to where if you call out something, if you call out someone else, then they have to have a chance to speak, or like a debate. So you talked about the baseband world, Tony working for Lavo, a company that specializes and is leading the way in IP. Tony, tell us about the redundancies then on the IP side of things.
Yeah, so we build in a ton of redundancies when it comes to our gear, from a basic power supply redundancy in all of our gear, have 2 different power supplies, to stream redundancy. We talk a lot about 2022-7 when it comes to stream redundancy in your IP flows. So and then all the way down to redundant switches, on the network. We design 24/7 operational studios. So, pretty much everything in that studio has to be redundant down to, what happens if the vision mixer or switcher fails? Then we build in redundancies where you can swap over to a router panel and switch critical paths for the network in order to keep TV on air, because if TV doesn't stay on air, the TV doesn't make money. And so we design literally redundancy down to the stream level, and even hardware level. So, I mean, it's in everything that we do. And that's one thing that I think people don't think about enough.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something to elaborate on, Tony, because the redundancies of the corporate / broadcast world would often be very different than the redundancies of a church world. And the reason for that is it just comes down to advertising dollars. A television station can tell you, 30 seconds of lost airtime is going to cost us this much money. That would be interesting if a church could put a value on.
Well,
could put a value on.
I don't know if we want to get into that conversation.
There's entire departments in broadcast, even for me who's working. I work with a large sports venue. There's entire departments that are focused on making sure those advertisements are played out. And made sure that they're on scores tables, or make sure they're on LED banners or commercials or just spots. Right. So it's big money. People pay a lot of money for those spots, and they want to make sure that's taken care of. Right.
Yeah, I think that.
But it's the same way. I had a conversation with a church literally last week, and it said, what happens if your front of house console goes down? Do you just shut down service? Because, that's going to have a great effect on the people that are there. And if people leave, they don't have a chance to give. They may not give online. It's a reality of that they may not give after that, or may skip a week. And, I'm not trying to say it's all about money, but money drives the mission of a church. And so there's things to consider when it comes to your equipment and redundancy, for sure. And it's funny because AJ and I have had this conversation countless times, and it's things we've talked through about the system that I was a part of at a large church, and things we consistently talk about just as we discuss systems that you guys are deploying or that I'm deploying.
Yeah. Really good here too. I've got my own chat pulled up, and one of our guys in our internal chat said redundancy is looking for single points of failure. So, that's really the idea behind it, is going through your system and looking what is a single point of failure. And if that single point of failure went down, what is the complication of that? Like what does that actually do for me? So, Brady, I know that you had something to say about redundancy. Go ahead.
And I think it's perfect talking about that single point of failure, because sometimes the thing that you can not plan for, especially right now, is like server crashes that were happening a ton in the first few weeks of all these churches coming live, which our redundancy was that for that was we recorded the first service, and we always record the service to an ISO drive, and that way we could put it up internally on our website if one of our servers went down, which we used there's a lot of them that went down those first weeks, especially when the West Coast started popping up and all these churches started streaming their churches around the 11 o'clock Eastern or 9 o'clock, Pacific time.
Well,
so you need to plan for those redundancies, if you will, as well, of the things that are out of your control, but you need to plan for those.
And a lot of those systems are built on the same system, realistically. A lot of those, like your big ones are your Wowzas, your Azures, your S3s of the world, and some of these streaming platforms are built on other people's platforms, right? And they're just renting that space from them, repackaging it, and advertising that as a streaming service. So yeah, when things started going haywire on the high level, it really caused chaos then down. And the reality of it is some of these smaller streaming services that are maybe more targeted towards houses of worship didn't really have a fighting chance, because it wasn't their systems that were crashing, it was other people's systems. The other thing about this too, and I was having this conversation that was really interesting with someone the other day, was that our company, Force Tech, we offer streaming. And when we offer streaming, as kind of a base package, so people estimate, how many viewers they're going to have, and we associate a cost with that. But we pay a per. There's a transcoding side, so there's we pay per hour on the transcoding, or per minute on the transcoding. We pay per minute on the delivery. We pay per minute on the encoding side of, like the ingest side of things. So we're paying per minute, right? We're paying per minute or per hour. And one of the really interesting things about this is that all of these platforms that are building off of something like a Wowza server or off of an S3 or an Azure server, most of them are paying as well per hour, per minute. And with that, they don't expect to have the viewer numbers that they're now having, because as we've seen the world now switch to everyone is watching online, and you've gone from houses of worship averaging maybe 1,000 viewers on a weekend to now 10,000 or more viewers on a weekend. The load has significantly increased. So I would be really interested to hear how these streaming platforms are managing. I mean, they're still at a flat rate cost, right? Like they're still at that normal cost to their users, but obviously their costs have increased, exponentially as they've had to handle that traffic.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see that play out. I think at the end of the day, it's just going to come down to time. I think yes, we've experienced some very interesting things in the past, month or so, but I think the world's going to get more interesting as time goes on.
I would agree with that.
I think, and I know I've had a lot of, backdoor conversations about what entertainment's going to look like, what sports are going to look like, and I'm sure Tony's been in the same boat with the company he works for, and just what are some of those things. What are some of those differences that we're going to be seeing? I know that there's sports leagues already talking about how they're going to start operating without crowds for the next year maybe, and things like that. It'll definitely be interesting.
I had an hour-long conversation today about churches opening up. What's even cleaning look like, and what type of cost does that incur on a church or a sports venue or somewhere who's trying to have the max amount of people that are allowed in? What's the cleaning look like? What's the cleaning cost? Because people want to feel safe, that they want to know that things have been cleaned out between services. And
you nailed it. More so than that,
look like?
More so than that is the safety. Is that people, if they're not going to feel safe to come back, then they're not going to come back. Yeah, I don't think there's any cleaning on earth that you can do to make people feel comfortable. So yes, the fact of the matter is that live streaming is here to stay. It was always here to stay. I think what we'll start to see is, I think that conferences, these large national conferences, if they don't need to have people in person, will start to disband a bit. I think that's kind of coming. But I certainly think that if you look at it from a house of worship streaming, that that is here to stay. That is gonna, there were churches that were having a large amount of viewers before this happens, and it's going to just grow higher. And now, I think what do they say, Tony? You might know this number better than I do, but it was like, I think people normally watch a service 3 or 4 times online before they would ever step foot inside of a church building. Was it something like that?
Yeah, I heard numbers upwards of 6 times. But yeah, that number is somewhere between 3 and 6 times before if somebody would ever even step through the door, for sure.
Yeah, so it's kind of the first door, right? It's the first door to your services. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I want to flip this, mix this up for a second here. I had an interesting text message the other day from a person asking about, so Dante now, there was an article out the other day that talked about Dante going over something like a VPN, going point to point basically, because now Dante Domain Manager supports GPS, maybe AES67. I'm not sure. I haven't read much into it. Do you guys know anything about Dante or AES67 over essentially the internet, using domain manager with GPS clocks, or what's the scoop on that? Because the big question now is, for someone like us, can I receive a bunch of audio signals and mix them down in my house live and send that audio back to the bands, or I guess that kind of thing? Any thoughts on that from you guys?
You can go
I'll let
first,
AJ
Tony.
start, and then I'll.
Oh boy, they both said. I'm going to pin this one on AJ. AJ, you start us.
Honestly, I don't know yet what's possible. I think, I can tell you that we've successfully sent content that way over private networks, essentially over wide area private networks. But it's always some form of high bandwidth switched fiber. I've never had success sending that type of information back and forth over the public internet. It's always been some form of switched fiber, some sort of wide area network.
But there were some pretty stringent requirements with that. And Tony, let me get to you in 1 second, because I know one of the applications that AJ's talking about, there's some pretty stringent requirements in terms of the network gear that's required to do that, right? Utilizing, I don't know, making sure everything stays in sync. I know you know more the technical language than I do.
Just PTP, I say just PTP like it's, just no big deal. Just PTP.
Okay, Tony's laughing here. Maybe Tony, AJ, between the two of you, dumb this down for the rest of us. Explain PTP. Explain why this is important when it comes to the synchronization of networks.
There's this timing protocol called Precision Timing Protocol, and it's relevant for two industries in the world right now: the stock market, industry number one, and broadcast, industry number two. And it's probably more relevant than that. But I think at the end of the day, it's still one of those timing protocols that we've adopted because it exists. It's a way that the stock market uses to keep time, to keep time. And I think, I could be wrong, Tony, but I'm pretty sure we adopted it because it predated us. The cellular networks use it. I know the stock market uses it, and at the end of the day, it just comes down to having the proper switch gear in place so that everything can stay synchronized. All the way down to your Ethernet switches and everything else. So it's not that it's complex. I think it's just it can be very costly to implement still because it's not standard Ethernet switches.
It's kind of complex.
It's Cisco level switches.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Tony.
So part of the reason why PTP was implemented because NTP was not as accurate enough. When we talk about timing, and especially timing in a system or between two systems, those packets, you got to agree on what time it is, what time the packet was sent and what time it arrived. So if you think about a standard IT network, an email can get to the other side of the network whenever it decides to get there. When audio is in play or video is in play, those packets have to arrive in a certain order within a certain amount of time. And PTP allows those packets to make sure they arrive in time and in order, or essentially even be reordered if needed. Because if not, then those packets either get thrown out or they're out of sync, and so then video and audio don't look right together. And so what happens is PTP is based on the switches all agreeing when midnight of 1970 was. And so what happens is once your switches or your gear...
Down to the nanosecond, by the way.
Down to the nanosecond. And that's the thing with NTP, Network Time Protocol, it doesn't sync as quickly as PTP. And so I was actually having this conversation today between a studio that wants to share video and audio between New York and LA, but they want to be able to pass PTP over this wide area network. It's just not possible. It's over a 45 millisecond one way, and PTP just won't traverse the hops. And so you've got to have a GPS lock on either side, along with a grandmaster, in order to lock the signal from when it left New York and when it gets to LA, and LA back to New York. And so it's something to consider. And people don't understand it with Dante. Dante is using PTP. It just kind of handles it on its own in some ways, and that is sometimes the problem with Dante. But Dante uses PTP v1. AES67 uses PTP v2.
Yeah.
That's it's simple.
It's
super
possible
simple.
with a ton of money.
It's. I mean, yeah, I guess it takes money, but
would you have a PTP network on each side? Each sender would need a PTP. Cisco
each side needs a grandmaster. Each side needs boundary clocks, and each side needs essentially has to be on that same pulse, if you will. So they're both getting their pulses from from GPS satellites. It's not coming from anywhere else. It's all coming from GPS. And then they have additional clocks in the gear that synchronizes, that essentially maintains maintains a reference to that pulse all the way down to the nanosecond level.
Okay, so this might be stupid, but I think I know a little bit more about this than I let off. Not much more though. I think an easy way to kind of describe this though is timing. I mean, it's similar to Genlock, right? It's not, but it is. It's similar to something that is issuing a standard time. Now, the issue with that is we talk about latencies from one location to another, right? So that's where the GPS side of things comes into place, right? Because it's using GPS clock, the latency from one location to the other location is assumed, right? And it's assumed because it's assumed based off of values that are being given via GPS clock. Because even fiber has some amount of latency to it, right? Does anyone know what the latency of fiber is? I was actually trying to look this up the other day.
Well, it's the speed of light.
It's the speed of light.
Speed of light. So essentially, and speed of light plus the intermediate gear that's associated, right? Any type of switching gear. So, but it's the speed of light, but the speed of light is still relatively slow when we're talking about Los Angeles to New York, right? I mean, it's obviously incredibly fast, but there is some difference there that will cause issues to equipment.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had to do the calculation today. It's about 23 milliseconds, is the speed of light between LA and New York.
Yeah. And that's easily enough to cause issues with equipment, for sure. And to the point where you eliminate that by using GPS clocking.
I mean, the packets get time stamped. So, I mean, the PTP is agreeing, okay, this time, this is when it left, this is when it got here, this is the order it needs to be in, and it creates an offset, between the two locations to make sure, there's buffers and everything involved. I mean, we could literally, I was on a hour and a half web chat this morning just talking about PTP. So we could go down the rabbit trail, but I mean, we're here to help if people are, need help, sending audio, video across the wide area network for sure.
But therein lies the thing is that it's not just as simple as, I think people get really confused. And recently talking to our clients and people that want to do these types of things, they get really confused. Like, why does this cost so much money? Why does it cost so much money to send low latency data point to point, even if we have the pipe for it, or maybe they don't have the, there are all of these questions. Why does it cost so much money to be able to do this? And I mean, this is one of the reasons why.
Yeah.
AJ, do you know how Unity Connect is doing it? Because I know with Unity Connect you can do 64 channels.
I don't know. I do know it's got to be some form of compression, but I don't think it's published. And I've never.
Yeah, that's something that when you're dealing with compressed protocols, people want to understand that timing is less relevant when you're dealing with compressed protocols.
Mm-hmm. Well, and essentially we're adding.
I'm just
We're compressing, we are adding some sort of a buffer, right, into the play, so not only do we have the degradation of quality, but we also then add the latency. I mean, right now we are talking through latency. Now it's an acceptable latency to do conversations, but if you've heard us talk tonight, we'll occasionally talk over each other. And the reason for that is because I'm asking a question, and if I'm not specific on who I'm asking that question to, then we have that communication issue where people start talking over each other, and it takes a second or two for us to get that worked out. So, that's one of those things. So, hey, I want to back up too real quick. So this stream tonight, again, we're answering your questions. We're answering them in chat on Facebook and YouTube, also answering them on the phone line, 317-284-5866. Did I get that one right?
586-2844, Nick.
317-586-2844.
One of these weeks we'll do it.
2844. It's so unbelievably hot in my room right now. Don't know why, but I can't fix it at the moment. So we're just keeping on. We're just going to keep going until I get that phone number wrong 10 more times.
I thought you were blushing just because I was on the the podcast.
Well, I am, but it is warm in here.
I have a talking point that we can discuss.
Yes, please do.
Please do.
Oh, baby!
When was that in? I didn't get the email.
Yeah, they came in today. So I plugged it in at my desk so I could test it and make sure it
Does it work?
I mean, it's got lights on it, so I know
That's
that
cool.
much.
Okay.
But
Hey,
Jody
Jordan,
looks super happy.
we should talk about this piece of gear because I mean, you guys have gotten probably hundreds of calls. I've gotten, let's say, a half a dozen calls about this piece of gear, and I haven't steered anybody toward this piece of gear at this point.
So we honestly we got them in because we knew they were going to be a hot item. That's really all it comes down to. We knew, we're a dealer, and we knew people were going to need some sort of quick turnkey solution. I think that this goes back to our redundancy conversation, though, primarily because I don't think I can understand the ATEM Mini doing what it needs to do for a very simple 1 or 2 camera stream. But I think that at the end of the day, and I don't want to call them shortcomings, because it's like one of them is $295, the other one is what, $695 or
$595?
$595.
$595.
So it's not shortcomings. I mean, it's a $300 product and a $600 product. So it's not. How do you address a shortcoming on a $600 product? There's only so far.
It's what, $1,000 for the next step up. Is that right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Well,
it goes $395, $595, and $995.
yeah. So the next step up would be the ATEM 1ME, the ATEM Television Studio Pro, or Television Studio HD. Is that
Television Studio,
Yeah.
Television Studio HD, Television Studio
okay.
Pro. You can tell
it's
AJ's not a
Television
sales
Studio
guy.
HD. Yeah, so it's one of those things that it's not as all-encompassing as the products below it, but however, it does have quite a few more features, but you're getting into a different world. You're getting into that world of SDI. You're getting into the world of not having as many things built in. You don't have a built-in encoder. You don't have a built-in recorder. You don't have all these other things built in at that price point. So you're essentially going, from what I'm gathering, you're actually going from closer to $595 up closer to, we'll call it $2,500, because you've got to have your encoder. So you've got to have like a Teradek or a Hilo or something like that, and then you have to have some way to record.
Or Web Presenter, Blackmagic Web Presenter. Yeah.
Yeah, and a Web
Issue with
Presenter.
the issue with the Web Presenter is it's only going to do 720 because it's USB 2.0, by the way. And it's also a little bit costly. The Magewell's units, but Magewell, the Elgatos, they're all 3.0. I don't think the transmission speed just isn't there for 1080 on the USB devices without going USB 3.0.
So I will say that I think the Minis and the Mini Pros are definitely going to serve the current need. They're giving the people the ability to get online quickly. But I think long term there's going to be shortcomings in those workflows. One of the big shortcomings and again, we literally just got I think 20 of them in and opened them. I opened one of them today just so I could put it on the bench and go through it and find out, what it does do, what it doesn't do. I think one of the biggest shortcomings I'm seeing is a single HDMI output that can only be used for multi-view and or program. So one of the things we were trying to design around today was, well, how do you get a program out other than the stream out and the record out, if you're using the multi-viewer. So, and I think that's a little bit misleading, because I think a lot of people were very excited about the multi-viewer, but I don't think they realized that the multi-viewer becomes your only sole. I say professional, but it's HDMI. Your only sole high definition standardized output. We'll call it. It becomes your only standard, not professional, standard high definition output. So that's kind of the shortcoming. Go ahead, Brady.
There's two sides of the coin, because we're talking $600, and $600 to us, we're talking about production gear, $600 is less than a drop in a bucket. It's you sneeze one way and you spend more than $600. But for some people who are using this, $600 is a lot of money, and it does a lot for for what you get. So
will it do? Is it doing
$600.
format conversion in it too, AJ?
It does. Yeah, it'll take anything.
I gotta say, it is ridiculous how powerful that small unit is, especially for those of us that came from, the world of, it's just tons of
on every input.
Exactly, just a ton of gear and expensive gear too. I mean,
yeah.
This is more like Tony. I just immediately think of you, and this is, this thing costs $600, and it's more powerful than your last organization's entire video room. Of like, but in a way, think about it though. Older video equipment that could only accept one, and this is not older video equipment. This is still most video equipment. Most video equipment can only accept one type of format into it at one frame rate, and that's it. It's 1280 by 720 or 1920 by 1080 at 59.94 frames per second interlaced, or and that's it. That's all it can do. And this device can take and change those over. I mean, something like one of the 4A TBCs, like, isn't it like a $4,000 piece of equipment that to actually do time-based correction or to do format conversion? I mean, that stuff's not cheap.
Yeah, but I think it comes down to at the end of the day, it comes down to latency, and
how many frames is that in then?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't measure that yet, but it's not zero, and I think that's what's important is all of the higher end equipment doesn't have any of that stuff because they don't. We as
Sure.
as the engineers, technician, whatever you want to call us, we want to control that aspect of latency. So it's better for us to handle that
Sure.
on the front end, so that latency is not being introduced down the way. So I think it just comes down to latency. We don't, if we can control it, we want to control it. We don't want frame rate converters and format converters and reclock
Sure.
and having to resync everything, because we want it all to be the right time from the beginning. So there's less latency on the IMAX screens.
Regardless, it's impressive it can do it. I mean,
yeah.
that's what I'm saying, I guess, by this. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is impressive that it'll do those things. I think when you get into a larger scale system, there's things like AJ's talking about, like latency. I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask, beyond this whole COVID-19 shutdown, I mean, how much can you really recommend this unit in a live production environment? Probably not a whole lot, just because it's missing some of those features. You don't need frame sync on every input, just because not every input needs to be frame synced. When you add frame sync to an input, you add latency to that input. When we talk about it's more powerful, yes and no, because just like AJ said, in a broadcast environment, you try to get everything to a standard, right? That's why 1080i or 1080p at this point, in a lot of cases, 48 kilohertz, things like that are a standard, because every time you have to change something, you introduce latency, and you have to compensate for that on the output. So it's something to consider. You can't just look at a feature and go, well, it's more powerful. You got to consider what it's really costing you. And converters, I mean, certain converters are going to be a whole lot faster than the other. Our converters are as fast as you can have them. They have to be frame synchronous. So we can convert within less than a frame, but it has to be frame synchronous. So it's always going to at least be a frame. So there's other things to consider other than just features too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's important. The big takeaway is don't expect a $300, $600, or even $1,000 item to do what a truly professional broadcast production switcher would do. Know the limitations and know that it is essentially a throwaway product after it breaks. Don't be running your huge broadcast on this or your entire church. It's great to have in the corner for maybe redundancy, but
I think. Well, I
Go
think
ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say my entire point was it's just a lot of processing packed into a small box. That's what I was joking when I said it's got more features. It has more, it's bigger than Tony's
Get
old.
out of here, Nick. Get out of here.
It's basically a graphite, guys, for $600.
What I'm saying is that it is just having been around, having doing this for almost 10 years now. It's an unbelievable amount of processing. I mean, and it still does. Like if we're doing format conversion, typically we're going to install either a decimator, or if it's more complicated than that, we're going to install, an entire format converter, a rack mount 1RU format converter, and it's going to cost quite a bit of money because the features are larger, the feature set is larger, it's going to do it quicker, and an FS4 or something, or a
Lavo equivalent.
Or a
What's the
Lavo.
Lavo equivalent?
Lavo C100 or V Pro 8.
There we go.
Yeah.
V Pro 8.
V Pro 8. Yep.
So,
V Pro 8.
but we're going to install something that has a lot more features, right? He's going to go. He probably got one in there. So again, I'm just saying for the form factor.
There we go. Yeah.
Exactly.
Thing is huge.
There we go.
I was going to make a joke.
How long is that thing? Jeezy Pete's.
I was going to say
Hey,
Using
show
all
you a piece of
38
real
inches of that
broadcast
rack.
if you
That's
open
real
it.
broadcast gear right
I was going
there.
to say if you open it up, there's just a black magic. No, I'm joking around.
Yeah, it's just an 18
gonna
mini.
get a
It's just
screwdriver
an
now.
18 mini right inside.
We're gonna have to delete this podcast for many reasons after that.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I
No,
love it. I love it.
no, I was planning on deleting the podcast anyways. Don't worry.
I do think it's necessary to talk about the magic of FPGAs, because I'm pretty convinced that we're all living in the Matrix now. Especially when they just tell you that.
Let's pause
that,
this
Yeah,
conversation.
I
real
want to
quick.
talk about this, but we do have a question in chat, and I want to get back to this. But we would be, after we've made this whole push of listening to chat tonight, I would be dumb if I ignore them. So I got a question here from Brian. Brian said, what are you guys' thoughts on the Blackmagic Studio camera? Was going to call Tony about this, but this works too. Tony, didn't you buy these at your last organization? We all have opinions on them, but I'll start with Tony, because Tony has had not hands-on experience with the studio camera, but with the you had the pocket cameras, or did you have the studio, the older
We
studio
had
cameras?
the cinema cameras, and we had the Ursa. We had the Ursa, and then we had the studio cameras.
Yeah, what your thoughts on those, and then I can kind of AJ and I and Brady all can probably answer too our thoughts on the newer cameras. We've all seen them at NAB too, so.
I mean, I think you got to understand what you're getting into. We spent a lot of money on optics to go with our Ursa and with our cinema camera. So in order to make it work in the environment, there was a lot of things that we had to jump through. But at the time, when we bought those cameras, I mean, to make a jump to HD, it was going to be, in the neighborhood of, $300,000-$400,000 at the scale that we were looking at. And we were able to do that for much less with those cameras. Push forward to today, I think they've developed a lot of features in their cameras, but you still got to understand some of the limitations in the sensor technology that they're using. I think if you live in a Blackmagic ecosystem, there's things that make them a little easier to work with, as far as shading and things like that, intercom. If anybody's been able to even get the intercom stuff working, I would love to even know that. But yeah, I think you just got to understand your limitations of the camera. It's not going to, people look at it and say, oh, I get this for this price. Well, is it really going to live up to those expectations and what you're looking for? It's one of those things you probably should spend some time, go somewhere, take a look at the camera, get one sent to you as a demo or something, and really kind of get some realistic expectations around the piece of gear versus looking at the price, think it's going to be everybody else is using, at a cheaper price. It's just not the reality, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's definitely kind of the same thing that I've seen. You don't want to look at that online price and think to yourself, oh, well, great, this is turnkey, because it's very much not, and I think even going back to the Mini that we were just talking about, nothing really in this industry for the most part is turnkey, and I think that comes down to the cameras as well. Like Tony was saying, I'm sure they had tens of thousands of dollars invested in those lenses, that they put on their cameras, and that's what it takes to get a reasonable picture out of them. Yes, there are other things you can put on them. There are more cost effective ways to get into them, but at the end of the day, if I'm in a budget world, if I'm in a budget world, I'm probably just going to get a camcorder. I'm probably just going to get something like what is that Panasonic camera?
The 350
what's that one we're talking about?
Yeah, 350 CX 350 or whatever.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. The CX 350. That one's not expensive.
Got a
It's
one-
got
It's got a 1x
20x
imager,
Yeah,
20x
it's got 20x
zoom.
zoom on it, and plus it's
SDI
got
out.
it's 4K, so it's got digital zoom, so it's got at least a 2x crop factor that you can zoom in further with.
You can also color it
SDI
with the
out.
Scarhoy RCPs as well, so you can get a remote control panel for that camcorder.
Okay,
for-
yeah.
Well, let me lay this
$2,000.
down real quick too for us. Okay, so I've actually put this package together because I wanted to demonstrate to a couple of people why it wasn't so affordable. Because I think one of the hits with the Blackmagic stuff is it's so affordable. And to Blackmagic's credit, it is. Most of their stuff is incredibly affordable. But if we break this down here, here's what I've got. So we've got the Ursa Broadcast, and I can't list out prices for these. I don't think that's a wise idea on the stream, but let me just list what I have and then tell you kind of what that breaks down to. That we have to make a package comparable to a studio setup. So something you're going to buy from Sony or Hitachi or Ikegami, their entry level, Grass Valley, any one of the manufacturers. For their entry level studio setups, that's going to include viewfinders, it's going to include the camera body, it's going to include the lens, it's going to include the fiber, RCP, CCU, on and on and on. We would include a tripod in that, right? Here's what we have. We have the body itself, the Ursa Broadcast. I was using the XA20 SX8 with a doubler. It's a Fujinon lens. It's a Fujinon 20 times with a doubler on it. The studio conversion kit, which allows you to control the actual camera or the actual lens itself, servo zoom, and actual grip focus. The viewfinder, fiber converter, the Blackmagic fiber converter, which you have to have, which is basically your CCU, right? 250 feet of indoor studio fiber. Another fiber converter, that's right, because you have to add the fiber converter to the back of the camera, and then you have to add it, to the other side as well. So,
the rack, yeah.
so that's quite a bit. The control panel, a Miller tripod, and a Miller additional panhandle. That entire system came out to be, and this was just what we would expect for it to sell on something like B&H. You know how much that system came out to be?
Probably
$13,000.
13?
Oh, with a lens? With
Yeah.
a lens? Oh,
25.
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s? What do you say, AJ?
I said 15 to 20.
And Tony?
I said 25.
Tony's right on it. $25,200. That's how it
Yeah.
went, which much it was. You can start to get in, and granted, you don't need all of those components. So I'm not going to sit here and try to act like, oh, you need every bit of that, because you can take SDI directly out from the camera. You don't have to have you don't have to have the control, the CCUs for them or the RCPs for them. And the RCP does power 4 cameras, so you could make a point to say, well, that's powering 4 cameras. So you can make all of these points. That's fine, and that's not the point I'm trying to get at. I think that they're fine cameras, but they're not cheap by any means. Like, they're not inexpensive cameras. If you want to buy the full thing, your first camera, you're in it for $25,000. You would expect the equivalent entry-line Sony or Hitachi camera to be in that $25,000 to $32,000 range, depending on what options you get on it. So, in fact, if you didn't get a CCU and an RCP with a studio camera and just powered it locally, the camera stole SDI out from it and gave it Genlock, you're pretty close to that point in time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I just want to
And I would say with the Blackmagic, make sure your lighting's really, really, really on point. If you want to go that way.
I think that's always
because with every camera, make sure your lighting's on point. But if you go by those booths or you take that camera out, there's a ton of lighting on the subjects that they're
it was. I think it was always best to go to at NAB. God rest their soul. At NAB to go to the Blackmagic booth, because they clearly always, like, you go to the Canon booth, for example, and Canon is testing their glass. Obviously they don't have a lot of skin in the camera game for broadcast. I've seen people use the C500s, but at the end of the day, Canon at NAB, it's all about their glass. So they've got nice glass with very low lit sets, and you can get really just tight on some of those actors there, and it looks great, and then you go to the Blackmagic booth and just the light is blinding.
They spent more money on their lighting than they did the entire booth.
Yeah.
Lighting.
But here's something we can talk about. SMPTE fiber. So yeah, that's
Is that my connector?
Where'd you get that from?
Connector that I've been waiting on.
Yeah, it is. But yes,
That's mine.
Speaking about cameras, back to your point, that is something that broadcast cameras have one, typically just have one connection. You just plug it in and that's all you need to it. It's not 10 cables running to it.
No, that's another huge thing. I was making a point to a client earlier today was that there's nothing better than just plugging in one cable. Power, comm, signal to, signal from. I mean, when I say signal to, signal from, I can get video to return video, right? So yeah, no, there's nothing better than that, and that alone to me is worth the extra money. So I want to switch gears real quick and see, Tony, you're the guest on the show tonight, although we want to have you around more because you're fun to have on, and occasionally if we try three different sources for your microphones, one will work. I want to know, I'm sorry, I got to give Tony a hard time when he's here too. Tony, I want to know, we've asked all of our guests this, any new technology, anything cool? Obviously we just had virtual NAB. What is some stuff that you guys just released or tell us all the inside secrets that you can, which I know you can't and you're not going to, but tell us about what you're seeing. What's some technology coming out?
Oh, technology coming out. I think, AJ alluded to it earlier, FPGA technology, we are doing a lot when it comes to software-defined hardware. So it's one piece of hardware that does a myriad of functions based on software that you load on it. We're doing that in our console stuff. We're doing that in our video stuff. One of the coolest things we're doing with consoles right now that you can share an audio core amongst 4 consoles, not just on a local area network, but a wide area network, and partition an audio core, 1,024 channels across 4 consoles. So for us, a couple of our consoles, the surface is just that. It's just faders, screens, and then the audio DSP or engine portion lives in a rack remotely. And for us, our new UHD core, FPGA based, doing a lot of cool stuff. And like I said, you can connect a 4 consoles to that one core and process up to 1,000 channels in one rack space. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool technology that's come down the pipe. And
I'm sure you
that's
can
one of the
never
coolest
done
things I've seen so far.
Right,
Well, I was gonna say the
Exactly.
I/O on that is just USB, right? Or is it FireWire?
Yeah,
It's only 2 Cat
10
5Es.
gig. Yeah. Yeah, you can run Cat 5 if you'd like. It has up to a 10 gig connection, but it can work on a 1 gig connection. But
I've never heard of 10 gig FireWire.
FireWire. Yeah, I was talking actually to Arista, who's a switch manufacturer for those out there watching, and we're discussing 400 gig technology for UHD 4K Studio. So it's a single network port that handles 400 gig. And so it's coming. And it's really not just for UHD, but 8K that's coming. A lot of people in the Asian Pacific region are looking for 8K. So that's probably going to be the next big wave that comes here as far as video technology is 8K. And so you're going to need the bandwidth on a network to handle that.
Try pumping 8K through that Blackmagic Mini Studio Pro.
Good fry.
Does that have 12 gig? Is it 12G?
12 gig HDMI.
Does that have 12 gig
12 gig
SDI or HDMI on it?
I haven't tried plugging any 12G sources into it. I should try that.
It's not going to work.
I got a question for you guys. I had this come up I actually have a church. I think I mentioned this on one of the last calls, that I have a church that's looking at doing Dolby Atmos surround for their broadcast. Do you think something like that may catch on? The reason why they're looking at doing it is one of their remote churches meets in a theater, and they can actually take the Dolby Atmos signal and decode it and so, do you think you say it now and it sounds like, man, that's just pie in the sky. But I really truly could see more churches doing kind of surround format worship services as the consumer at home gets a little bit more accustomed to watching online and wanting maybe a little bit more quality.
It would definitely be
I think
interesting
spatial audio is, it's coming on with a ton of, I think more for live events, more for streaming, of course. I think spatial audio is going to be taking on a lot more. And you're seeing it with speaker manufacturers pushing it. I think it's getting very cost prohibitive to the general public at this point. But I think it's something that I hope takes on because it sounds really, really cool. And it's more natural to your brain, and you get a lot more space to mix in. So I hope so. I'm not sure about broadcast, but definitely live event.
I don't know. It's tough. It's tough for me to say whether or not. Because I would love for it to. I would absolutely love for it to. But I also still rip all of my CDs and listen to a FiiO audio player. I'm more about, I think, those immersive experiences. And I think end user consumers are, majority of people, I think, are still, watching on this or listening on this. And I don't know. I don't know. I would love to think that there is absolutely, a market for it, but I don't know.
I have firsthand experience in this one. So the house of worship that I was working at before I came to work for Force, they were one of the first houses of worship auditoriums to have a Meyer, what is it called? Constellations, yeah, Constellation system. So essentially, the room that was built that I worked at before this was a 2,000 seat auditorium, and it had no parallel reflections. So every wall was slatted at an angle to each other. The roof was at an angle. The back walls were angles. Front walls were angles, and there was no parallel reflections in the room between any surface. Right. So when you do that, there's still natural reflections that are going to occur, but there's no standing waves, I guess, no interaction between the two parallel walls. So it significantly reduced the amount of reverb that was in the room. That's not the point. The point was that they had introduced a Constellation system in that room, which is 100 some odd microphones and more than 100 speakers. And basically, the system processes all of those microphones and adds reverb back into the room because the reverb's been taken away by the acoustics of the room. So it adds reverb. So as the congregation's singing, it amplifies the congregation. They had microphones over their stage, so if they had an a cappella group on the stage or a tap dancing group, or when they did their large theatricals, they could amplify that into the house naturally as well, make it seem like a cathedral. There was one mode called Canyon where you clapped your hands and you would actually hear it go and hit virtual walls and come back, right? So the original auditorium had that. And as they started campusing, they didn't want to spend the money on it. It really wasn't worth it, I don't think, for what it was. But one of the things they had used it for was immersive sounds. So when they built their new campus, one of the thoughts and questions was, well, how do we do immersive sound in here? So they actually implemented and ran conduit for the speakers for front, left, back, right. And one of the reasons they did that, sorry, AJ, was so that if you've ever sat in, whether it's house of worship or not, if you've ever sat in a room with people that is watching a recording, if there's a joke that's told or something where people want to applaud, that you hear the laughter, you hear the applause, but you only hear that from the main speakers. And oftentimes it's met with a very ha ha ha, or, these awkward, quiet claps, right? Because it's not immersive. You don't really feel like people around you are clapping or laughing. And that makes people not want to do that, right? When people are clapping around you or laughing around you, you're more, you're more likely to do that. So their thought was they would essentially record in surround sound at the broadcast campus and then spit out the house mics or the crowd mics at that remote campuses to make it feel like when people were clapping, that people were clapping around you to encourage the participation and that's the whole goal with these campus churches, is that they would eliminate the screen out of the kind of optics, and it would make you feel like you're actually there and you're not watching on a screen. So 2 things. Number 1, it's becoming less expensive, right? I mean, just talk about just basic SDI. SDI carrying 16 channels of audio. Most devices will carry those 16 channels of audio. It's not like it's hard to encode and decode those, right? I mean, it's not hard to just decode a channel and spit it to the back right or the back left speaker. So it's not like it's an expensive add-on, right, Tony? I'm not sure doing the actual live portion of it is or not, but I mean, we're not talking about high fidelity speakers. We're talking about noise, right? It's not really noise that's intentional. It's just noise at that point in time. I think for a minimal cost, it can be a good addition to add to an auditorium that is primarily viewing recorded content to help add some immersion to that experience. I mean, you wouldn't ever walk into a theater without a surround sound system, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what Brady was talking about was like the D&B Soundscape or the L-Acoustics Lisa system, to where they're doing object-based mixing. But back to like AJ's point, I've been in some conversations with actual cell phone manufacturers that are going to be putting immersive chipsets in the phone. So just your standard stereo earbuds, they'll be able to simulate surround and object-based mixing right into the headphone. And so, I mean, that's kind of why I'm asking the question of where you think where is this going to go when it comes to church broadcast? Because, I mean, obviously during this time, we've all had to get accustomed to church broadcast. If you like or didn't like church broadcast, hope you like it now, because, it's the way of the world currently.
Well, it's
not going anywhere. So why not just make it better, right?
I was talking to this with my father-in-law.
I think that's really important. Well, hold on. I think that's really important if the cell phone manufacturers or somebody does take that to a more mass market that's easily affordable, because how many of us are sitting around in Dolby Atmos or Atmos,
yes.
Atmos rooms watching our church broadcast? If it's something that's easily affordable, easily accessible, that makes sense, and that can catch on real quick.
Samsung and Vizio are putting that into their sound bars, so you're going to get upward-facing speakers, sound bars. So it's not about putting height speakers in your living room, but you're going to have that built into your $300 sound bar you bought at Costco.
Right,
and to give a better experience.
More TVs are moving to a decoding type platform, so they will actually more and more TVs are now starting to decode 5.1, so they might not be decoding it to and pushing that sound to satellite speakers around the room, right? But they're decoding that in an array that then helps make that listening environment wider. So here's the thing: we were talking about this with a client the other day, which was we've got a large client, and they're building out a large broadcast facility, and the question was, do we build the broadcast facility for 4K, or do we build it for 1080? And it was pretty clear to everyone we build it for 4K. Whether or not it's used for 4K at the start, or not, you don't want to limit yourself, I don't think, when you're building a new facility. And we're talking about,
at least on the infrastructure for sure, because it's different cable choices. It's specifically in the baseband world, it's different cabling choices, it's different patch bay choices. It's a lot of different choices. If you're in the IP world, it's just bigger switches.
And we're talking about marginal increases on the infrastructure. The difference between on a baseband level going from a type of cable that can support 4K or 1080 is not that large of a difference. So I guess at
this point, if you're doing 4K, you're pulling fiber, and hopefully you're going to pull fiber regardless anyway in this scenario if you're thinking about a pathway to 4K. So I mean, fiber's fiber. At this point, when you start talking about distances that you can actually run 4K signal over a piece of copper, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it's like, I think we're getting off kind of where you were heading with it, but yeah, I mean, you've got to have a pathway to these things.
Signal mode fiber, Tony. Fiber's not fiber.
Well, fiber is fiber, yes.
Fiber is fiber, because I mean, I would have an argument about multi-mode or single mode in that case, but that's a whole off podcast topic.
So either way, kind of what I'm saying by all of this is that you wouldn't want to limit yourself. You know, if you can. I'm trying to think of, like, if you're buying a new console and you're buying the equipment to encode and decode off of SDI or just mix in the video world with Audio World, right? There's not many things that don't support multi-channel audio. Like, you're not adding a significant amount of cost into a system that can do a 5.1 mix, right? Most consoles anymore out of the box can support 5.1, and most equipment can support multi-channel audio. You know, the world of 5.1 is kind of confusing when you start mixing to broadcast, because it's not just like 5.1. It's not like you set a piece of equipment to be 5.1. Obviously, you're encoding just on multiple channels of audio, and then somewhere that's decoded. But no, I would say, why limit yourself? You might as well at least design around the ability to do 5.1. And, you know, if you don't utilize it up front, you don't. But if you want to utilize it down the road, you know, let's put it this way. It would not be hard to take a Livian as one device and take 6 channels of audio off that into a QSys processor and split that out amongst your room to create a 5.1 system in a live roam.
Yeah.
My thoughts on it, but I think it's really cool. No, I think
cool to see.
No, and I think in the broadcast realm too, I think it's a great idea. I think as more and more people move to sound bars and move to more intelligent TVs like the new Vizios that are doing that kind of array sound morphing, I think it's worth investing into. I have a question.
I mean, Sports Ball is doing 5.1, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, Sports Ball is doing 5.1.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, tell us. Okay, the coolest thing. I have 2 questions for Tony, and this is because I'm not saying this because Tony's on the show. I really like Lavo's audio consoles, but more than their audio consoles,
they are sexy as all get out.
I love 2 things about the audio consoles. Number 1, I love Kick, and I want you to explain what Kick is. Even though it's old, it's still very cool. And like, I explain it to people every once in a while, and they're like, wow, that's really interesting. The other thing I want you to explain, and before Tony came on the show, he actually agreed tonight that he would explain this to us and he would share all of the secrets, is how Lavo's stereo, he knew what I was going to say too, the stereo widening, the black magic, which is in the consoles, how that works. Explain Kick and explain the stereo width thing to us.
Yeah, so Kick is a pretty cool technology that we developed. So in most sports leagues, you have player tracking data. That's where you get your stats from, various things. So like soccer, for example, the tracking data tracks the ball, it tracks all the players on the field, who's on the field, who's not on the field. And so when you see all the stats, that's where that really comes from. So we've developed a technology that will extrapolate that data and then set up an auto mix on the console based on your point of interest. So you can set the point of interest to be the ball, a specific player, and so once you do that, the microphones will auto mix themselves, or the console will auto mix itself based on where those objects are on the field. So it's a pretty cool thing to watch in action. And then there's actually a company that makes these kind of pan tilt microphone stands that actually will follow the ball in turn left or right based on where the ball is on the field or your point of interest. And then we've actually done it with Sennheiser as well. They have a multi-microphone array to kind of steer the microphone pattern, and it will actually steer the pattern of the array as the point of interest moves around on the field. So we developed that for soccer. It's actually part of the contract for the Bundesliga in Germany. If you're going to show one of their games and you're going to have to be mixing one of the games, you have to have the Kick technology. So you have to have our console and the Kick technology, or you will be fined by the league. And we've done actually comparisons of people actively mixing, like a person doing it, like you would in a standard mix, versus Kick, and Kick just sounds so much cleaner because it can react so much faster than kind of a human can. But and then we've even actually
I was going to say, the things you can be fined for. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, we've tested the technology for hockey as well. So you may see it in hockey at some point.
Instead of Kick, do they call that like slap?
Sports. Yeah, I wanted to call it slap. Sports ball. No, it's called puck. Yeah. So
yeah, sports puck.
Sports puck. Just
If
we'll
this- if
send the
this-
bill to the marketing team for that name creation. By the way.
So, if this call wasn't so late, we actually have a kick demo set up at one of our colleagues' house in Belgium, and that's how we've been doing demos. But I think right now in Belgium, it's somewhere around like 1 a.m. So Frank didn't want to stay up to do a 1 a.m. demo. But,
So
yeah.
so we're going to schedule a time where we can record one, and then we'll do it. It is really one of the coolest things. In fact, it's super eye grabbing too at NAB, because you walk up to your booth and you see a bunch of microphones surrounding this kind of interactive display with a microphone sitting on top following the ball. So it is really neat.
Yeah, now we can just follow the pastor around. I guess I don't know how we do that in church. You know,
Follow the worship.
no
Follow
longer,
the worship leader.
No longer have to worry about his headset, right? You know, just we'll use a microphone array and follow the pastor around.
The days of your pastor holding their microphone and dropping it to their side are over, because we all know everyone wants to hold their microphone now. So, okay. I know it was a joke when I said he was going to explain the stereo width thing to me earlier. It is the coolest thing
They
ever,
won't even
though.
tell me how it's done. You know, it's like I asked the
And
R&D
you work
team
there.
how we do it, and they go, and I work there, and they just go, it works. It sounds great. You know, I'm like, yeah, how does it work? And they're like, it works. You know,
If you didn't
they
know-
act like it's a language thing. It's really not a language thing. They don't want to tell me.
Tony joined the company to figure out how the stereo width thing worked, and they still won't tell him. He's ticked.
No, it's not.
It
at all.
sounds.
Not at all.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I would say I notice with Lavo right away, and is it is hands down the best sounding console on the market. You know, all the way down from the pre's through the way they're processing the audio, they just sound phenomenally as transparent as it gets. I've genuinely never heard anything sound as good as a Lavo. And I don't think I've ever experienced kind of just what I would consider the just a lot of the forethought put into it. You know, I mean, just the way the console's laid out, the way things kind of pop up as you're going to make adjustments, just little things like that. I mean, I had to mix on a console the other day, and I was very upset that things didn't pop up in front of me as I was turning the knobs, and I really liked that about the EQ section on the Lavo. Why doesn't everyone else do this?
My favorite part of the Lavo console still is the
Money.
virtual snap. It was you turn a fader up and you can set a virtual snap to anywhere you want. So if it's at 0 or -5, -10 or whatever, you fade the faders up and it will snap into whatever setting you've set it to, which is unbelievable.
Something to do with FPGAs.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize we've been making consoles since like 1970, guys. So it's like Lavo's not a new thing. These guys have been thinking about audio for a while, and if you know the Germans, man, they are very meticulous. So yeah, it's we're doing some cool stuff.
I like the Germans. It's one of my favorite part about going to NAB is hanging out with the Germans. So,
I like
And it
BM
comes in matte black, which is
I don't
everyone's
know
favorite
BMW,
color.
but I like BMWs.
yeah. Well, you guys. Oh, you know what you should do, Tony? Is you guys should put some wood trim on the consoles like the BMWs have. And I don't know. There's not another console manufacturer that's
We're not
done that, is
Yamaha.
there? There it is.
We're not Yamaha.
I used to call the Yamaha consoles the
Nobody does that,
BMWs.
right? Nobody does wood trim on the console, right?
Yeah. The PM10 with the burgundy wood trim all the way across the front of it.
They still do it, man.
Yep.
The BM7 still does it. Oh my gosh.
Yep, it does. Okay, so we have time for more questions. We have time for your calls to
We
317.
haven't scared everybody off yet.
No, I mean, there's still a few people here. 317-586-2844. We want one caller throughout the night. If you've been watching throughout the night, this has been this disaster stream from the start of it, and we did a massive demonstration on what not to do when you're doing online streaming, which is to make sure you test. But the stream's
I would
really
say
been.
go back and watch that, but we're going to delete that.
We're going to
so.
delete it. Yeah, the video on demand will not be readily available as soon as the show is over. But no, we've had a great night. We've got our normal co-host Brady here with us. We've got AJ with us as well, and we've got Tony Stairs with us from Lavo. And we've been talking about really anything production goes. That was kind of the point of tonight's episode. Next week, we're hoping, and I'm going to get confirmation from AJ right now, we're going to look at cameras, AJ, next week. Yeah?
Oh, I don't know if we'll have them all in, but we
Okay.
have one camera we can look
Okay,
at.
we've got one of the cameras in it. I think one of the goals is eventually here in the next couple of weeks we look
Compare a
at
broadcast camera to a webcam, you know.
which
This
one
is
looks
a
better.
Logitech 380.
we've got
What camera do you got?
we've got a Hitachi. Currently, we've got a Hitachi 5500 in, but then a Vericam is coming in as well with a Cabrio lens, and we've got some other Hitachi broadcast lenses coming in too. So
Fujinon broadcast.
Get the Flatiron guys on the call. They have-
Hitachi doesn't make broadcast lenses. Fujinon, yeah, heck, let's do it. So we're gonna talk about that. Flatiron guys.
Oh yeah.
Flatirons has Vericams, yeah.
So
And
we're
they
gonna
have
talk
a
about that,
Lavo console.
and they've got a Lavo console. We're gonna have Tony back. Tony's gonna be regular. If I can convince Tony's gonna be a regular guest of the show when it's not the scuffed. But yeah. So we're gonna be doing that next week. We're gonna be looking at hopefully cameras next week. If not, we'll be doing something else. But either way, so we're still taking your phone calls tonight. But while we open those lines up, phone calls. Someone said you're welcome to. Oh, it's Nate in chat. If you guys didn't know, yeah. One of our producers for the show and one of the guys that works at our company is, I think, sitting in the hospital right now, and he's dedicated enough to hop in chat. So, Nate, I hope everything is well with you, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Negative for the Rona, though. He tested negative.
Negative
So
for the
that's
corona.
Well, good.
Yes. Yeah, so we're still taking your questions, but while we take those questions, while we take phone calls, it is getting towards the end of the stream. So I want to go around the table and I want to do closing thoughts, which are going to be very random tonight, and just go for it. Yeah, we'll start with Brady as we usually do.
My closing thoughts have nothing to do with the stream tonight, other than test your equipment and
Same.
Test. But I miss subwoofers a lot, guys. Can we just take a heart to heart? I really miss subwoofers. I miss live audio. I miss large speakers and people, and I can't wait to hear, mix on a larger system again, other than headphones and a TV output. So
That's true.
There's my food for thought.
That's
Subwoofers
true.
do the soul good.
That's true. One of the systems we just put in right before this all ended was a system that had quite a bit of bass in it, and I'm sad that I don't get to hear it more than like 2 weeks. I feel bad for our clients that we installed a bunch of live production gear for, and like literally 2 or 3 weeks later are not now using it. So I can't wait to hear those systems again. So yeah, that's good.
Yep.
AJ, your closing thoughts. He has one hair sticking up right in the middle there. Do you see it, AJ?
Oh, I see it.
It's just one little.
It's my quarantine cut.
It's your quarantine cut. It looks good. And by the way, real quick, a round of applause to AJ. AJ's looking great, guys. AJ is looking great. He has been corn dieting, and AJ's looking fantastic. So,
See my quarantine cut. I just took trimmers and I almost gave myself like that 8th grade bowl cut, but I decided not to. But
I would have paid real money to see that.
I don't like it getting long like right here, so I just took trimmers and just trimmed all that up. But
Two
Nick,
can you at one time, just like that?
You can't even tell. What?
Can you show the
Two
picture
at one
that I
time?
just-
You just
You want me to do?
You know what? Yeah, no, I did too. I've got my closing thoughts. My closing thoughts is in that WhatsApp picture I just sent you. Can you show that?
I
Do you have
can't.
a way to show that?
I don't have a way. I can work on that for next week. What is it? Explain it. Use your words.
No. How do I put this up?
Just
Can
show
I
it
share
on
my
your phone.
screen?
No, just show it on your phone.
Okay, I'll show it on my phone. That's what I'll do.
While he's getting his phone, Nick, we do have a question from BJ in the chat. What's the next best or preferred option for bringing audio into vMix? We currently are sending audio out of the board into PTZ Optics camera. Then we connect via RTMP feed from the computer running vMix to capture the video audio source.
Honestly, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion, because you're keeping your audio and your video in sync. That's my thought originally, but the other question is, and I'm not super familiar with the PTZ Optics cameras, full discretion, not the biggest fan of them. But if it's a mic level connection, obviously you're taking the mic or taking your output of your audio console into mic level is going to add a bunch of distortion and artifacting to it, because the mic level preamplifier is going to be very sensitive, and then the output coming from your console is going to be much louder than that. So if it's a mic level input on the PTZ Optics camera, that's one thing, and that's not going to work super well. If it's a line level, honestly, that's kind of my ideal. I think we talked about that. That's kind of my ideal scenario is that you ingest it. If you're just using one camera, you ingest it at the camera level, because once you ingest into the camera, then the audio and the video is going to stay synced from there, and it's going to come into OBS synced up. There are some things you can do in OBS to sync audio and video. It's harder to sync video to audio. What's that?
He said vMix.
vMix. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, he's going the PTZ Optics into vMix over in RTMP feed.
Okay. It's always going to be harder to sync video to audio than it is going to be to sync audio to video. What I mean by that is if the video is delayed, it's easier to sync back the audio, right? It's easier to delay the audio. It's harder to delay the video. You can delay video, but it
costs more money to delay video.
It costs a lot more money to delay video.
Yeah.
It takes a bunch more hardware to delay video. So I would keep that unless it's a mic level input. If it's a mic level input, I would consider bringing it in a like a Scarlett 2i 2 or whatever, some type of interface that would allow you to bring that in line level, and then sync the video up in vMix. You can delay video in vMix if that gets out of sync. You can also easily delay audio in most applications, including vMix. But I don't see any reason why it's a bad idea to bring that in on your PTZ camera. So, anybody disagree with me?
No. I think if the PTZ camera is working, then do it that way. If it's not, get an audio interface. And run it into the audio interface. I think that's still, at the end of the day, I would still actually gravitate towards an audio interface, only just because I have yet to see a camera that even high quality cameras are not spending money on their analog to digital converters to get that signal to the digital realm, So I would say if you can, it's always best to use an audio interface.
Yeah. Hopefully that answered your question, BJ.
Or find someone that's just going to mux, your video and your audio together.
Yeah,
it's true too. Tony, your closing thoughts while we got you.
Man, my closing thoughts are stay connected to people. I think you hear that a lot, but my world was spent traveling before, being stuck at home for the last, 6+ weeks, and not being face to face with people is tough at times. So, if there's somebody that comes across your mind that you think about, reach out to them, because it's staying connected is important these days. So do that. Find a community of people that you can chat with virtually, that you can talk to regularly, and just stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. All this stuff is important about the church staying connected to people through broadcasts and kind of what we're doing to help people here. But just that overall mission's about people. So just make sure you're staying connected.
Hey, and at the end of the day, if no one ever watches this video, we just had a fun 2-hour conversation with each other and stayed connected, right?
Exactly.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
I've actually considered doing, we can talk more about this offline, but I've actually thought it would be fun to do kind of like a midweek, just a random Zoom call, just let people call in on Zoom or whatever, and actually call in with video and stream that out. So maybe on a non P3 day, me, you, and Tony can just get together and just pop up Zoom and be like, "Hey, call us randomly during." The day.
Essentially, that's what this podcast has been for the last 7 or 8 weeks. But yeah, we can do that too offline. So,
it'd be fun.
Well, hey, real quick, I want to thank everyone for being here. AJ, Tony.
I didn't do my closing thoughts.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
No, I
didn't.
I got to show the picture.
Oh yeah, show it.
Sure, he was going to show us.
Show it.
So these are my
Is it
closing
appropriate?
thoughts. It's appropriate.
It was not as inappropriate as the music apparently that I played tonight on the stream.
Yeah, seriously. These are my closing thoughts, and it just has to go back to what we discussed initially, with making sure that you're talking about redundancies and things like that. And here's what I want. Here's what I want everyone to keep in mind. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Hold on, I gotta go direction.
We can't see the words, so you'll have to read the words.
Now we see it. It's perfect.
Oh, there you go. Even redundant systems fail. It's true. Always have a friend.
With two empty toilet paper rolls.
That was at your shop.
Is that in our office?
Yeah, that's the one meme. That's the one meme that I've created. That I'm
Wait,
very
that was
proud of.
us?
I'll turn this light off.
Yeah, that's our toilet paper roll.
Oh gosh, where did you post that online yet?
I posted online a long time ago.
That's perfect. I love
You
it.
can't see it now. But anyway,
I could see it.
but it just goes back to what, we're going to have to figure out this whole technology thing and figure out a better way to share that image. But it just goes back to what we were talking about.
I'll figure it out next week.
You always need to have plans in place. You always need to have backup plans in place. So, I think that's always real important.
Yes, and tonight I did not have the backup.
A's, B's, and C's.
I did not have a backup plan in place tonight, but I appreciate everyone continuing to watch through this and you guys for working through it with us. So,
well, acceptable failure there seems to be you're just going to have to use the cardboard roll, right? Not since you don't have any paper left.
That's right. That's a third. That's the second redundancy is the cardboard roll.
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's not talk about the third. Nick, what's your closing thoughts?
What are my closing thoughts? This was
man.
one of our most fun streams ever. But it's we're gonna
informative. It's fun.
Least informative, most fun, which is
It
exactly
wasn't informative at all.
which is exactly what I thought it would be. So hopefully people enjoyed it though. Hey, listen, we're back next week. We're going to hopefully be talking about cameras. Listen, we're swamped right now. Here's the reality. We want to make this podcast work. We want to make it interactive. The whole goal is really for this to be interactive. If we don't accomplish anything at the end of the day other than chatting with you guys and communicating with you guys, answering your questions, then this isn't worthwhile. There are lots of podcasts out there that talk about production, but the whole goal of this one was to kind of take real world scenarios and for us to answer those questions on stream while having fun. No one wants to watch something that's serious and that we're not having fun. So mission accomplished tonight. I want to thank again our guest Tony Stairs for coming on, who I'm hoping Tony's going to hang around and be with us more ongoing. AJ, same with him, and usual Brady, who I also hope hangs around for the record. So it's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys again. We're back here again next week, 7 p.m. Eastern time at Force at facebook.com/Force Tech Solutions, as well on the YouTube page. If you haven't had a chance, go over to the YouTube page and subscribe so we can get 100 subscribers, and then I can actually give you a link for that. But we're back here next week. We're hopefully talking about cameras, but if not, we'll figure out something to talk about. And we're going to keep doing these things. Hopefully answer your questions, be interactive, be fun. Right now, be a place where we can come together and be in community with each other when we really can't be in community in real life. And if nothing else, it's a good place for us to come together and interact. So this VOD will not be available immediately, but all of our VODs are available on the YouTube and the Facebook page. We're going to chop this one down tonight and make it a little bit shorter and take out the first part, which we might release in 10 years. So, hey, thank you so much again for joining us tonight. Join us back the same place next week. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Find more information about us at force.tech. You can find more information about Lavo at where, Tony?
Lavo.com, LAWO.com.
And what's your email, Tony, in case people want to reach out to you directly for questions?
Tony.stairs@lavo.com. So that's STAIRES. Tony.stairs@lavo.com.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right. That's it for tonight. Be safe. Have a great rest of your week. Hope to see you back here next week. See you guys.
Behind every flawless performance,
or game-changing meeting, or important broadcast,
and even a powerful Sunday morning worship service,
there are people just like us.
Well, us actually. And we're not in it for the glory.
We're quite content staying right here behind the scenes.
It's where we belong.
It's where we want to be. Our reward is being unseen.
Because we know
that when we do our jobs well,
most people won't realize that we've done them at all.
Our mission is to partner with you
to design the best audio, visual, and technology experience that meets your needs.
And then step back behind the curtain to make sure it always runs without a glitch.
When it does,
you get to accomplish bigger and better things.
Supported by well-designed technology.
Not hindered by it.
And in the end,
your success becomes ours.
And we wouldn't have it any other way.
We are Force Tech.
We are Force Tech.
We are Force Tech.